All right, it's Friday, July 21st. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. There's actually about 10 minutes to go in trading. I just wanted to do a recap now. I need to leave here, but it should essentially be, the same no matter what happens in the last 10 minutes. You can see here on a Friday, we are ending up with an inside red looking bar. So after yesterday's red bar, we were anticipating follow through lower. If that would have happened strongly out of the gates, we would have had another 2 down day and kind of a compound outside bar of this green bar, making the high here, and then with a new low, expecting that low to be tested. Instead, in terms of price action, we had a pretty wide pre-market range between the blue lines, and we were kind of moving up towards the open, but right out of the gates, we had the first bar red. So our downside bias was still in place in terms of potentially reaching yesterday's low, and there was a decent entry here to sell or buy puts at, if you were going to trade the SPY, seeing if we can make it down there. Now, what happened was, obviously, we ended up with a very choppy day, which I'll get into in a minute. But if you did go short here, anticipating that, you had follow through, you had a little bit of a failure, then you had another follow through, and then another failure. So you had a whole hour here with which to either take scale out, set up a no risk trade, break even, or even take small gains. Bottom line is, no matter what you did, you shouldn't have got hurt, even if you were trying to hold on all the way down here and see if you got kind of a directional move to start the session. Given the wide, you can see here that the ideal trades in this situation, if we were going to get an up day, we would have wanted to break, early above that pre-market high, and a down day, we want to break above this pre-market low early and run. In this case, we're opening up right in the middle of a big range. You can see like right there, essentially, and within minutes, we're kind of right in the middle of the range. So now any kind of first bar follow through, you got to kind of see if we go to the bottom of the range and test it and what's going to happen. And in this case, we came right down there and then kind of paused. We had one attempt to make it through and then paused again. So again, definitely biased to the downside, but depending how you played it, who knows, it's just one of those days where you didn't get, you had actually some nice gains in here, but if it's possible you just broke even, so at the worst. Anyway, so then price comes up and it kind of gets above the midpoint of the first bar, and that shows you, again, you're in the middle of a big range, so there's certainly no upward bias, but now you kind of know you didn't get kind of an orderly pullback in here and then a push lower. And at that point, the bias is still to the downside, but you don't know for sure. To me, the only way I would have started to think about testing this pre-market high and a big reversal day was if we got above the first bar high. Remember, that first bar in my methodology kind of means everything. If we would have went above there and held, and then and I wouldn't have even bought that right out of the gates. I would have kind of waited for some kind of orderly pullback and then maybe a move to test whatever intraday high it was in this pre-market range. That would have maybe changed the bias. But you could see here all day long, we never got above the first bar high, really never got certainly above the pre-market high. So the bias was always down, even though there might not have been any obvious trades to take. I mean, if somehow you wanted to look at this red bar and then try it again, you had another hour to try to work down to those pre-market, the intraday lows, didn't do it, so you could have broken even at the worst. It just didn't follow through. Now, at this point, not surprising at all. Within this crazy environment, you're getting now broadening action. You're taking out stops up top. You're taking out stops down here. So once it came up here again, no upward bias at all. And then this big red bar, when I saw that, I kind of was thinking we're going to get to the lows of the day and maybe by the end of the day take out yesterday's red bar low, because that was kind of the anticipation all day long. As it turned out, we paused and we came down there, and now we're about 5 minutes to go before the close. So I don't know what this last bar, 15-minute bar, is going to end up doing. Maybe we get a big flush out, or maybe we kind of get a big push up here and close right in the middle. So let's assume we don't really go lower. We came down, we did take out that intraday low from this red bar, so that was, again, the only thing you consider. Nothing long today, and the short trades really didn't amount to much, and sometimes that happens, but you shouldn't have got hurt. If you look around the board, I traded NVIDIA early. There was a great trade, one push down, pause, kind of a second push down. Again, there was great morning trade there to the sell side in the afternoon. you took out liquidity a little bit and then you got the reversal and tested that low one more time. I'm not saying that was an obvious afternoon trade to take, but it was the only thing to consider with the down bias. If you want to be patient after this morning move and at least try something, who knows? But, a lot of stocks actually had very negative, Netflix, same thing. One pushed down below the pre-market lows. See, that's the thing. When they go below the pre-market lows, that's really the downward bias. On the SPY today, never really got out of that range all day long. I mean, here's the pre-market range between the blue lines. We stayed in there. So just not, an easy day on the indexes, but nothing to get hurt. So anyway, as we end the week now, we have an interesting inside bar here. What that means going forward, if we look at the weekly chart, we kind of have a green week here that didn't fall through all that much, but on the same, it's not necessarily a failure looking bar either. So who knows what happens next week? Do we start down and take out this low and then work, towards this fair value gap I discussed on the weekly chart in here? Or is this something where we're pausing or heading higher? Well, at least we have the inside bars to find out. If we break above there Monday, then we could be heading higher. If we break below, we're heading lower. Also, on the inside bar, I like to look for failures. So I could see us, for example, starting down here, maybe reaching this target and then failing and coming back through the midpoint. That would be a strong buy signal. Same thing on the downside. If we start up and we run into resistance into this selling tail from last week and come back through the midpoint, that's a strong sell signal to me that this week, next week we'll probably make a 2-down week and go lower. So a lot of interesting things on Monday in terms of you got to play the breakout one way or the other, depending where price action starts. But be ready if you don't get followed through and some kind of reversal off that first bar on the pre-market range. We'll see where that all ends up. I'll get into that more next week. You could have failures on this inside bar as well. It's just too tough to say. You have gaps to fill down here. You have a big picture uptrend in place that this is really just 2 bars of pausing. If you look at this is nothing too terrible when you really think about it. And this week didn't end up with a big shooter bar that necessarily projects lower next week. So we don't know. That's why we let price action lead the way. Today it let it lower. But, it's just a matter of how you wanted to play it. Individual stocks, a lot of good gains on the downside. The SPY itself, you had gains, just depending if you took them or not. So let's see what happens going into next week. Like I said, keep in mind, inside bar, breakout one way or the other is this first thing to look for. But then just keep in mind the potential failure, that could develop. And the failure to me would be a strong signal in terms of where this next week is really going, either up or down. If we start lower, can't reach our targets, look for higher. If we start higher and can't follow through, look for lower. That's kind of the way I'm thinking about it at the moment, but we'll see what happens next week.